Mary J. Blige was born on January 11, 1971, in the Bronx, and if you know anything about Mary J. Blige's story, you know it did not start out gentle. She grew up around violence, drugs, and instability, and by the time she was a teenager, she'd already dropped out of school and stopped going to the church that once felt like her only safe place. Think about that contrast for a second. A kid who once described feeling the spirit singing hymns at 12 years old turning into a teenager who said she'd become her environment by 16. Here's the thing people miss. She didn't get discovered in a studio, and she didn't come from money or connections. She got discovered singing Anita Baker's Caught Up in the Rapture into a karaoke machine at a mall, on a cassette tape that somehow found its way to the right person. That tape landed in the hands of Uptown Records, and within a year, a teenager with zero formal training was signed to a major label. No vocal coach, no industry background, just raw talent and a voice that sounded like it had already lived a full life. But here's where things get interesting. Fame didn't fix what was broken inside her. It just gave the pain a bigger stage to perform on. By her own admission, Mary J. Blige was dealing with a serious addiction to drugs and alcohol well into her 20s, at the exact same time she was becoming one of the biggest names in music. Picture this. A woman selling millions of records, praised by critics, adored by fans, going home every single night to numb herself just to get through the pressure of it all. That's not a contradiction. That's actually one of the most common patterns in addiction, where the outside world sees success and the inside world is falling apart in silence. She said outright there was a real chance she could have died during this period. In her own words, she described a moment where it came down to two choices, live or die, and she knew she had to choose. And this is where most people make a mistake. They assume addiction and massive success can't exist in the same story. That if someone's on magazine covers and topping the charts, everything underneath must be fine too. Mary J. Blige is proof that's simply not true. Success didn't cancel out the pain. If anything, it delayed the moment she had to face it. In 1994, she released My Life, an album she's since called a literal cry for help. This wasn't a metaphor for marketing purposes. She was writing and recording from inside active addiction and real emotional crisis, and millions of people heard themselves reflected back in it. That's the paradox at the center of Mary J. Blige's entire career. Her lowest, most private moments became the exact material that made her a legend. Nobody was pretending on that record. That's why it hit so hard. Albums like My Life and later Growing Pains weren't just projects on a release schedule. They were documentation, almost like an audio diary, of a woman fighting in real time to stay alive one song at a time. She's talked about how it took years of painfulness to reach the emotional place where Growing Pains could even be written, saying it would take a lot more growing and a lot more pain just to sustain whatever breakthrough she'd made. That's an incredibly honest thing for an artist at the top of the charts to admit out loud. Around 2000, Mary J. Blige met Kendu Isaacs, a music manager who quickly became her partner and later her husband. She's described him as the first person who ever truly challenged her, asking her why she was drinking, why she hated herself, telling her she didn't have to be around people who tore her down. For a woman who'd never had that kind of steady support in her corner, this felt like the answer to a prayer, almost literally. She said she prayed for someone to help her, and then he showed up. They married on December 7, 2003, and for years afterward, Mary J. Blige publicly credited Isaacs with helping pull her out of addiction. She even thanked him in a song title on her 2003 album. In interviews around that time, she described him as unafraid of her, confident, someone who wasn't intimidated by her success, and she framed that as one of the reasons the relationship worked. On paper, it looked like the redemption arc her whole career had been building toward. But here's where things get interesting. Isaacs wasn't just her husband. He was also her manager, meaning he controlled a significant part of her career and her finances at the exact same time he was supposed to be her equal partner in life. Think of it like putting all your eggs in one basket, then handing someone else the basket. That dual role, spouse and business manager, is a setup that sounds efficient on paper but creates a serious imbalance of power in practice. Over the years, cracks started showing that the public wouldn't fully understand until the marriage collapsed years later, in one of the most publicly documented divorces in R&B history. In July 2016, Mary J. Blige filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. This wasn't a quiet behind-closed-doors split. She alleged that Isaacs had been unfaithful. With a younger artist he also managed on her own label, and she accused him of mishandling her finances. Now this next part might surprise you. Because she was the primary earner throughout the marriage, a court actually ordered Mary J. Blige to pay Isaacs $30,000 a month in temporary spousal support while the divorce dragged through the legal system. Sit with that for a second. The woman who alleged her money had been mismanaged ended up legally required to keep paying the very person she said mismanaged it. Isaacs, for his part, never directly confirmed or denied the affair allegations, but he did suggest publicly that her version of events wasn't accurate, saying on social media that he never wanted their private life aired out in public. The divorce took 2 full years to finalize, officially ending in June 2018. During that stretch, Mary J. Blige has said she was left with almost nothing in reserve. She's talked openly about having to go back out on tour just to rebuild enough money to cover her own basic expenses, including her own rent, after paying out alimony month after month. That's not the image most people have of a 9-time Grammy winner with over 50 million albums sold worldwide, but it's the reality she lived through, in real time, with tabloids and court documents making it public property. It's worth pointing out just how strange that situation really was. She was the star. She was the one filling arenas and generating the income. And yet the financial pressure of the split nearly outweighed the pressure of her original addiction. Money problems and emotional problems were tangled together all over again, just in a different decade of her life. And this is where most people make a mistake in judging a story like this. They assume the divorce was the ending, the low point she never recovered from. It wasn't. Her album, Strength of a Woman, came directly out of this period, built entirely around the pain and the resilience of starting over. Later, songs like Rent Money pulled straight from the financial nightmare of the split. She's explained that the title literally referred to a time when she had zero money left over for her own rent after handling her alimony payments. Mary J. Blige didn't hide from what happened to her. She didn't try to control the narrative by staying silent. She turned it into some of the most honest music of her entire career, the same way she did back in 1994 with My Life. It's almost like her whole discography works as a timeline of every major wound she's ever survived, put to a beat. Here's the twist a lot of people don't know about. Years later, reflecting back on everything, Mary J. Blige said something that completely reframed the relationship. She admitted that Isaacs did not deserve the credit she'd given him for her recovery. She's explained that she'd simply been searching for a savior, because she'd been hurting for so long and so badly that she wanted someone else to fix it for her. That's an enormous shift in how she tells her own story. It's not bitter, it's clear-eyed. She came to understand that real recovery had to come from confronting her own pain directly, not from outsourcing the healing to another person, no matter how much she loved them. That's one of the most powerful and mature things she's ever said publicly about her own life. Today, Mary J. Blige has been sober for years. She's earned an Academy Award nomination for her acting in Mudbound, becoming the first person ever nominated for both acting and songwriting in the same year. She's built out an entire second act in television and film, and she's continued a music career most artists could only dream of, spanning 15 studio albums and 9 Grammy wins. She's structured her life around discipline now, consistent routines, physical health, daily affirmations by her own description. The girl from the Bronx who once thought she wasn't good enough, who felt like she had no self-respect at 16, became a woman who openly says she's still healing the little girl inside her, and doing it on her own terms this time, without waiting for someone else to save her. So here's the real takeaway. Mary J. Blige's story was never really about a scandal or a single headline. It was about a woman who kept surviving her own worst chapters, over and over, and kept turning them into truth that other people needed to hear. That's the loop we opened at the start of this video, and that's exactly how it closes. She didn't just survive her life, she turned it into art that helped millions of other people survive theirs too. If this gave you a deeper understanding of who Mary J. Blige really is, you're going to want to see the next video, where I break down the album that almost never got made, and why it became her most important work yet. Hit like if this opened your eyes, and subscribe if you want more real stories like this one. No fluff, just the truth.